Alrighty, everybody, it is 6 o'clock. Welcome to Beaver Politics. I am your host, Mr. Radical, with my co host, Cutie Mrs. Radical. We are here Saturday nights. This is a brand new show for Saturday nights. And what we are going to be talking about is predominantly news events. It's mostly going to be on an open box format, such as we're having tonight. I will introduce two topics tonight. The first topic tonight is Stephen Harper and the IDU. Now, as always, Beaver Politics is by the people and for the people because we are the people. And the format has to remain respectful. If you are not being respectful, if you want to devolve the conversation, you will simply not be part of this conversation and you will be asked to leave. The entire point of Beaver Politics is knowledge through discourse, and we can only have that discourse if it is respectful. Now, some other housekeeping notes. Sharing is caring, tapping is clapping, and we are looking for one more person to add to our Beaver Politics team. And we are really hoping that it would be somebody under 30. So it's not just us geriatric cases that are running the show all the time. We want to reach out to the younger generation. Now, first topic tonight, like I said, is going to be Stephen Harper and the IDU. I'm going to introduce the topic and then we're going to bounce the idea around a little bit. At the halfway mark, we're going to introduce the second topic tonight, which is UBI, a universal basic income, and what does that look like and what does that mean for Canadians? So, I'm going to introduce the first topic. If I could have everybody shut their mics off or anybody joining in. Now, first and foremost, we have to understand Stephen Harper, our former Prime Minister, former Calgarian. And one of the first things that we have to understand about the IDU, one of the reasons that we talk about the WEF so much is so we are not talking about the IDU. The entire point of the IDU, who recently changed their name to the International Democracies, international democracy, something they changed it ever so slightly. I'm not sure what the point of that even is. Stephen Harper is the chair of that. Stephen Harper is also a well-known buddy and proponent of Modi. He is also a proponent and a vocal appreciator of Erdogan. We both know these people are dictators. We both know that they suppress ideas. The entire point of the IDU is to have those types of voices running countries. And we also know that those types of countries are starting to become few and far in between. North America is obviously the holdout. Now, Danielle Smith has floated the idea that Stephen Harper should actually be running the pensions for Alberta. And I don't know any idea that could possibly be more dangerous than having the head of an international democratic union who's buddies with Modi, who is buddies with Erdogan, suddenly handling people's pensions here in Canada. And in all honesty, it's one of the least destructive areas that they could possibly be, because the entire Conservative department is basically at the behest of Stephen Harper and the IDU. It's often questioned, why is Stephen Harper being discussed so much? The reason that he's being discussed so much is because he was our last long-term prime minister. We saw what 8 years, almost 9 years of conservative rule looked like, and it didn't end very well for Canadians in general. The legacy that he left with the Chinese and the FIPA agreement is something that we don't discuss enough because that is intertwined with our current policies. And Stephen Harper, who signed that agreement, as well as his puppet Pierre Poilievre, who is part of that cabinet who signed that agreement, are now starting to head the Conservatives and could quite possibly be our next government. All of the politics of these different factions are completely intertwined. And what I see is they are constantly spearheading this shift to talk about the WEF that doesn't particularly have any power. However, we do not talk about the IDU, its legacy, or its head almost at all. So, that is the opening discussion point for tonight. So let's bring it back to the panel and see what the panel has to say. Miss Radical, do you want to start it off?
So yeah, I remember back in the day, I want to say it was like 2000, yeah, like 2008, 2010 when he was starting to put that together, and all these churches thought it was just this like nice group to get together and talk about God and serve the community, when it's terrifying how the IDU and what it's been involved with over the years.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeet, what do you have to say about that? No, doesn't seem like Yeet's there. So, Angela, what do you have to say there?
Oh, can you not hear me?
Oh, there you are. Now we got you back. Yeah, go ahead, Yeet.
You go ahead. I'm having some technical difficulties here, so one
You
sec.
betcha. Angela, are you ready to jump in there?
Sure. First of all, we should be very concerned about his connection with that, as well as the fact that Harper has always been and continues to be involved with the federal conservative party, and he has a lot of influence still in this party. And now this is my opinion, only my opinion, from the evidence and things that I have gathered about him. So he has enough influence that he can get rid of a leader, whoever the leader is. And that's pretty scary. So he has a lot of influence in this party and will continue to have influence in this party. And we should really be concerned about that, especially now that Pierre is in. Do you remember that when O'Toole was in there, they found that he was too progressive for their party. So he was easily removed. Now, people need to remember that, okay? We also have to remember that Pierre was Harper's right-hand man, okay? And the connection with Modi, that's something we need to remember, because remember that Harper is the one that got Pierre into the cabinet, and he became his right-hand man. So a lot of policies that Harper was bringing in, he supported Pierre. So we should be very concerned about that. But now that he's involved with Alberta now, and like you had mentioned about the fact that they want to get rid of CPP, and they want to get into a different type of, it's pretty scary, type of pension there, which I don't think should be permitted at all. But unfortunately, it looks like they're going in that direction. For a lot of people, that's going to put a lot of people at risk, because your pension is like your security, right? And it's not a living. It was never meant to be a living, right? It should go in that direction now, but it's not. That wasn't the original idea of it in the beginning, right? But people
No.
rely on it, right? People rely on it. And to think that if that's going to happen in Alberta, don't you think if Pierre got in, he would support that too? The elimination of CPP?
Well, the reality is they all work together. They're all following the same playbook. The question is ultimately is who is providing the playbook, and I personally think it comes back to things like Stephen Harper and the IDU because I've asked the question often enough. Why was it when the convoy was happening that two Southern Republican senators were suddenly very, very worried about what was happening with the convoy here in Canada? And it's because it's all interlinked, they're all following the same playbook. And the Republicans, the conservatives here, are simply our Canadian branch of the Republicans, who are simply another branch of the IDU. But in the States, it's more toward the certain Mediterranean countries' influence.
I agree
Yes.
100%.
And if I could interject here just for a quick second, Radical, I'm going
Of
to be
course.
going upstairs for, like, 'cause it's cold in my house. Um, so my only question,
Sorry, Smarsh. Can I get everybody else to shut off their mics just so we can hear Smarsh? Thanks. I'll shut off mine now.
okay, the thing that scares me is he sold us to China for 31 years, knowing what he was doing was wrong. Okay, why the F are we letting him touch the pensions? Because if he can sell us to China for 31 years, what is he going to do with those pensions? Those people deserve the pensions they've been working for their entire lives. And a guy like Pierre, he knew what was going on. He was there when the deal went down. The only way we can get out of this deal with the FIFA Act is we give China 15 years notice that we want out.
Yep.
We're already in. We've already been in 9 years. We
Yep.
have 9 years, so we have
Even a
22 years
chance.
left. We have no chance to get out of it. And it's so ridiculous that people are like, oh, but Pierre is such a good guy. He is not a good guy. He is a snake in the grass, and he's going to run this country into the ground as fast as the Roman Empire went down. It took 9 years for the Roman Empire to fall. How long do you think before the U.S. is going to fall? Then Canada's going to follow suit because Canada likes to follow the U.S. I don't want to see this country fall. I don't want to see the U.S. fall, but unfortunately, that's what's happening. And we have to keep Pierre out of policy and office because if he can be a 20-year politician, have one bill passed and not gone through, what what does that say for him as the next prime minister? I mean, honestly, ask yourself that question. What can he do as prime minister if he's got nothing gone through in 20 years as a career politician? That's the question I posed to everybody.
Yep. Yeet, did you get your sound problems figured out?
Yeah, I did, and I'll be brief. I mean, when it comes to the IDU versus the WEF, I mean, one is transparent, the other one isn't, right? So, unfortunately, almost everything that we rely on is conspiracy theories when it comes to IDU, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but they are some theories, and the reason for that is it's behind closed doors. We don't know what's going on. What we do know is it's an ultra right wing movement. It's been around since 1983, if I remember correctly, and it's a coalition of center right parties that across the world that aim to promote conservative values and policies. Right, so it's laughable to me, the contradiction from those who are WEF puppets. And I can't say I agree with everything that comes out of the WEF, but they are transparent. It's basically, excuse my terminology, but a circle jerk of elitists. That's what it is. But it's a circle jerk that we can watch, as gross as that sounds, right? Whereas the IDU is behind closed doors. So I make sure as many times as I can, given my knowledge that so many are bots that we're communicating with online, especially on TikTok. But I point it out at every time. Oh, Carney's a WEF puppet and all this other shit. I mean, it's ludicrous. But I think it's important that we stay vigilant online and discuss that the IDU is far more dangerous, and we don't know a lot about it because it is secretive. That, to me, is the one significant difference between the two.
And that's a significant difference. I mean, we can talk about anything all you want, but when you can partly see what someone is telling you and you can't see anything of what the other guy is telling you, that's suspicious right from the get-go, no matter how you want to break it down, right?
Without a doubt.
Kamala is my president. You want to chime in here? Oh, I guess not.
I think they, and again, like you look at the AWZ company that has been popping up around the news, and you look at the investors in that company, there's one person that pops up that is very, very interesting. It's the ex-Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper. He's an investor in the AWZ, who is a Zionist company. So that's a really big concern for Canada right now. Yeah, Harper owns AWZ. He owns AWZ, which is a Zionist company. They are Zionists. Like, that is very concerning for Canada, considering we're supposed to be known as a peacekeeping country, not a fucking,
Smart
yeah.
Sheet, do you want to explain what AWZ for others in a
Oh,
way
God.
that they're gonna, so there are drones and there's a weapon on it, and
Yeah.
those weapons took
Yeah.
small people's lives.
Yeah, so AWZ is the company where Zionists are funding weapons to Israel to fight against Palestine or dismantle Palestine, and that is what it is. It's our own intelligence agencies and America, and they all back up Palestine, Israel to dismantle Palestine. That's what it is. It's weapons that are sent to Israel to use in Gaza. That's what it is as a whole, and that's what's really scary. Because if you think about it, we've asked for a ceasefire. How many times have we asked for a ceasefire? And the only people that have vetoed this ceasefire was the United States because they are part of the five permanent members in the UN. If you look at it strategically, right? Five permanent members, and the U.S. has one. And any one of those five permanent members in the UN can, or NATO, sorry, NATO. I think I believe it's NATO. I'm just trying to remember. Um, five permanent members. Any one of those countries that are part of the five permanent members, they can veto anything at any time, and it goes, and no one can say a damn thing about it. That's why I think the AWZ is dangerous because they're funding a genocide. Let's call it what it is. It's a fucking genocide. At the end of the day, it is a genocide. They are funding this and they are taking money and funneling it to the Israel government, and that's what it is. So, anyone want to look up AWZ? Stephen Harper is the owner of that company. They are destroying Gaza even more. People, innocent people, are losing their lives. Children, women, men, anyone that tries to help them are getting hurt. It is what it is. Like, we can't sit around and call it a war. We can't call it a conflict. It is that of it's a genocide. We're watching a genocide come before our eyes, just like we're watching 1930 Germany 2.0. That's what we're watching in the U.S. right now, going down. So, unfortunately, this is what it is, and I will be damned if I support a government that supports that. There is no way I'm supporting a government that supports that. No way.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue any of that. That's the unfortunate part, and that's part of why. Ms. Radical and I have been asked a question like, why do you put yourselves out there? Your views are not going to be welcome in certain circles. And for me, the reality is because I was a little bit of a study of history, the one thing that I understood that all of the lessons in history are taught is you never back down from an authoritarian. You just don't. It just never ever ends well. The second you back down, you have given them permission. And that's the unfortunate reality. And it's gotten sneakier. I mean, unfortunately, with the world that we live in today, in the past world, the bad guys were very easy to pinpoint and point out. Nowadays, with the shadow money that fuels so many of these people, we really don't know who is funding most of this stuff, where this money comes from, where it goes to.
Well, like he said, it's very behind closed doors. You don't know, and and I'm a firm believer of what happens behind closed doors come to light.
Yep,
And again, I have conversations with conservatives all the time. Well, don't you hold the liberals responsible? I hold all government responsible. I don't care. If you are a government official, I will hold you accountable until you prove me that you're a better candidate for our country. I don't care. You cannot do deals in the dark and expect them to not to come to light. You just can't. That is not a fucking thing that's gonna happen, especially in government. You were supposed to be a government official representing your country, and if you're doing deals in the dark and you're a representative of your country and it comes to light, unfortunately, that's your downfall. That's your consequence. If you didn't have to do deals in the dark, you wouldn't be in the spotlight when it comes out.
yep. George Williams, welcome to the show. Just to give you a quick format, this is an open discussion for political talk. However, we keep the discussion open and free. As soon as it devolves into names or accusations or anything like that, you'll be asked to leave. So, George Williams, let us know what you have to say today.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Thank you. That's how I choose to communicate. So, um, I just think that Canadians, well, actually, I know that a lot of us are misinformed and misled by any party. I don't think any of our elected officials are actually here to serve us Canadians. And I just wondering if you guys know that the RCMP has published a report as long as the FBI since Mulrooney was in power, every single government, including the current one, has been compromised financially with influence by foreign governments, namely China. All this kind of stuff should be, a front page in the media, and there's so much division, like divide and conquer. Um, there is a lot of things that I know. I've been to 28 countries abroad. I've been to the world's most dangerous places, and I've been fortunate enough to learn things that most Canadians wouldn't. A lot of Canadians also don't know that Canada has the largest population of agent provocateurs in the entire world. You couldn't even look that up. A lot of people don't know when they're trying to overthrow and assassinate the leader in Haiti that our government is behind that. The protests in Hong Kong and the uprising in China, our government was behind that. There's a lot of people that go on the dark web, so I mean, a lot of people do know this stuff, and it is public. One of the most interesting situations and experiences that I ever did have. And you'll see why I'm later. It seems like I'm going further away from the topic, but I had the opportunity to go to North Korea, and when I was there, I got to go there because one of my best friend's father works below Xi Jinping, so I got to go with Ri Young Ho, and I was fortunate enough to go to more places in North Korea than any other person in the world. And when I was there, I was shocked because we're told here that they're so censored and that they have the internet and you can't learn anything there. And I've even met defectors across the globe that would second this belief, and I've met many people on guided tours who would also confirm this. Um, but what I realized when I was there, they actually have big movie theaters every couple blocks in the theater, and they will have national news from all over the world and different languages. So when I'm walking there, I'm drinking this beer, and I see Al Jazeera in English with transcription on like this massive theater thing. I'm like, you guys get that? And I see RT and the library that they have there, and they literally say they have every book in the world, but then they say there's so much misinformation. My wife is Muslim. She has a small town, like we're in London, Ontario. She's published a few books. I've never even heard of her. The world doesn't know. When I was in North Korea, their information gathering program, the arm of their military, even though they work hand in hand with the Thousand Eyes program in China, it is so insane the wealth of knowledge that they're gathering on us. Um, it's here like they teach that they don't have satellites in space. The North Koreans have a very robust satellite space program. They're spying on us probably more than we're spying on them. We see in the media between North and South Korea how they're like blowing up these rails, and they're saying that they don't do trade. Even in times in the media when they're presenting the worst relationship exists between these two economies and they're battling, there is almost like it should be a wonder of the world, the scope of the underground highway that travels between these two countries. And like I said, a lot of people wouldn't even entertain this to be true. And prior to going there, I would have never have believed that. Fortunate enough for me, even going there, I was able to go outside places without a minder, which many people don't have the opportunity to do. But it's when you start to learn this stuff, you really start to question the integrity of our government. And I would just like a lot of people to know, just like the Americans can spy on us, we can. The technology that exists does not have safety, security, and protections for intellectual property anywhere in the world. That's just so 20 years ago. Canadian politicians know exactly what Trump wants. They know exactly how to avoid these tariffs. Canadians don't realize, even though this hurts our economy, our elected officials want this tariff. And it's really hard to believe, but it's really true because there's not a single elected official in Parliament that doesn't know exactly how to avoid it.
Okay, so what's the key to avoiding it, and why are they choosing a different option?
So the key to avoiding it is actually becoming a democracy. Like I said, our governmental institution has been compromised since Mulrooney, and this is published. So, like, our own intelligence agencies saying that we can't trust our government. It does get reported in the media, but it doesn't have the legs. Canadians have lost the spirit. I mean, the truckers, they had this rally where they went out, and there was a lot of people that, had misfortune for that in Ottawa, and I understand that. But sometimes us as Canadians, we really have to come together to hold our government to account. And we're getting close when they're freezing bank accounts. The government was scared.
Okay.
There's all
Now, I want to interject here. Now,
sure.
the ones that they were freezing bank accounts for were people that were trying to blockade borders. And I
Yes.
always have to ask the question, if you tried to block an international border in Russia or China, I think you'd have a lot more handed down to you than losing your bank account.
Well,
Oh, absolutely.
listen. I would honestly feel good about that. I didn't know much about it. My dad's a truck driver. He told me about it. I went and made a $10 donation. I didn't follow anything. I didn't partake in anything, and my account got locked out. That being said, though, the government does watch me because of my travels. I had nothing to do with it. So maybe I do have a little bit of a bias. Maybe you're right, and a lot of people like myself, unlike myself, weren't suffered. But I
Okay.
literally, like I said, I made a $10 donation, never followed anything, never communicated with anybody beyond just being told about it and checking it out. And I'm not saying
Okay.
necessarily that I
Okay,
support the things that you said.
George, I'm gonna cut you off here for just a
Sure,
second, because I want to have a chance for the rest of the panel to kind of respond to some of this stuff as well,
I
right?
would love that.
Angela, you haven't had a chance to say anything, so do you want to chime in here?
I just want to say that, Lindy, you were absolutely wrong. The Emergency Act was not martial law. It was because people were trying to overthrow the government in a pandemic. That was why it was frozen. So, you know what? You go ahead and say all the misinformation you want, but really, that's not what it was for. It was a pandemic. You guys got told no for the very first time in your life, and you didn't like it. That's why you tried to overthrow the government. It was about privilege. It wasn't about anything else.
Okay. Well, yeah, I understand your position. I wasn't saying anything other than the simple fact that my personal experience, having nothing to do with it, not even supporting what this gentleman just said, I had my account frozen. So,
Yeah,
like
no, I said Lindy. I didn't say George. I
oh,
was addressing a comment. I wasn't
sorry.
addressing you, sir.
Yeah. Angela, go ahead here, Angela.
Sorry. So you're saying that your account was frozen based on this, what happened with the occupant, what happened in Ottawa? Is that what you're trying to tell us?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, but do you understand what was behind everything, though? And it's
No, I didn't. Like I said, at that time, my dad was a trucker. He told me about it. I wasn't seeing the media and stuff like that. It was shared to me like this. People were telling me Canadians are uniting. They're going to Ottawa and they're demanding justice because they had some information that proved that the things that were being implemented wasn't, they wanted to put that out. So I said, that's pretty cool. I'll get behind it. And I just made a $10 donation. And I in this situation, because of my travels and the places I've done and the people that I've met and stuff like that, maybe I'm a little bit more watched than the average Canadian citizen. Um, I just think that this kind of activity, the government shouldn't have the power to do. I believe
No,
that police
no,
should have the
George,
power.
George, I've gotta ask you here. Let's look at it from the government's perspective. Now, you've said to me that you have been in 28 different countries.
That's
You
correct.
were allowed access to things in North Korea that
Hmm.
99.9999999% of people would not have access to. And then you returned to Canada, made a donation to a trucker convoy whose stated purpose was to overthrow the government, and then you wonder why the government had eyes on you.
Oh no, I don't wonder why. So my position was, I don't think, because I understand that there was a lot of bad actors from what's been coming out. But I do understand that there was a lot of people that weren't. And I think that even the police officer said they weren't given the powers when they needed them to act I just think that our police sometimes are given restrictions. And I think the government took too late to kind of pull the trigger. And the Emergencies Act was fine, but freezing accounts, I don't think it was.
Hmm.
Well, all Canadian Mulligan, thanks for coming in. What do you have to say on this?
Well, this is my first time doing a live, so I'm a little weird. But anyway, actually, I don't think. Oh, what's his name? George. I don't think George really, with all the experience and all the travel you've done,
Hmm?
you had. I'm sorry. I'm a little lost because you've had
I'm
like
sorry.
3 years to kind of figure out what that was all about, and you're still kind of complaining for about that you were kind of targeted with your bank account. Well, you know what? You should have done some research before you gave that $10.
Oh,
So
well,
you have to take you had to take the hit. I,
no,
I don't
yeah,
feel
I'm
bad
sorry.
for you. I'm sorry at
No,
all.
I honestly, I'm sorry. Actually, them freezing my account didn't affect me at all. I have multiple sources of revenue streams. For me, my argument wouldn't be that I was personally affected from that, but because I was affected from not really having much involvement, my personal opinion is just the freezing of accounts. I don't think it's appropriate. We have police in this country. They have the ability to go out and take action without freezing accounts.
Okay, can I ask you something, George?
Sure.
Do you know what a protest? Do you know what it is to have a protest?
Yes.
Okay, so having permits and stuff like that is something that you need to have, right?
Sometimes.
No, to have a protest, you need a permits to protest. Because here's the thing, it was an illegal occupation for 3 weeks. No protest that I have ever seen in my life had a bouncy castle, a hot tub, people defecating on shit, people using other things as urinals, desecrating Terry Fox's grave. I don't care if it was a dog, I don't care if it was a human. It was gross, and it was a tantrum that you guys had because the government said you couldn't do something and you fucked it off to Ontario and terrorized the city of Ottawa. It was an occupation, it was illegal, and you did what you did and you got in trouble for it. Deal with it.
Well,
Okay,
yeah,
guys,
no,
I'm gonna
I
hang on,
support that
guys.
position.
Hang on, guys. I'm gonna interject here. We have two new people in the box here. Lindy and Sparkle and Shine, welcome aboard. Thanks for coming in. As always, guys, we want to keep this open as a polite discussion. We are learning through discussion here on Beaver Politics. Sharing is caring, tapping is clapping. For everybody just joining in, this is Beaver Politics. I am your host, Mr. Radical. We are in a short amount of time here going to be switching up the topics here. We've moved on a little bit, but Lindy, you were up first. What do you have to say about this? And remember, please, everybody, we want to keep this absolutely respectful.
So if they were just throwing a temper tantrum, like the Emergencies Act really was scary. They put guys with pew-pews on roofs to go and collect the gas from the encampment to stop them from having their generators run. They took children from the vehicles and they froze bank accounts.
Yeah, I'm aware of that, Lindy, but here's the thing. Why were children even there in minus 40 weather? Why was it a 3 week occupation of Ottawa that took it to that extent? Why was there an effigy of our prime minister with a rope around his neck? Why is that okay? But it's not okay for the government to step in and say, hey, this is illegal. You cannot do this. You are terrorizing the city of Ottawa. Why is that okay? But it's not okay for the government to step up and say, this is illegal. Why is that not okay? I don't understand.
Because
I'm
all they
not
had to
saying
go on was their honking, the noise level, where it was
No, no,
nothing else.
no. Okay, hang on, Lindy. I'm gonna shut you down there because this discussion today is not about an illegal. And yes, it was an illegal occupation of Ottawa. Now, the original, but if this does stretch out into the broader concept of how did these people get there? Why were they told to be there? Who funneled the money? And where did the message come from that people, Lindy, like yourself, actually honestly believe? Because the one question that I have been asking ever since the convoy is why will your side not do the things that are actually mandated in our country to do when you want political change? But instead of that, you had children blocking an international border. And I ask the question again, if you had blocked a border in China or Korea or Russia, you would be a permanent part of that border.
It was a
Michael.
protest. Like, I went ice fishing when I was a kid, like,
Okay,
with the cold. So they were just with their family. Like, what's illegal about them being at the protest
okay.
with them?
Here's the thing. Do you know what blocking? Okay, well, so let's say there's a crime being committed, and I'm blocking the RCMP from getting there. Is that a crime? Is that a crime if I'm intervening when the cops get into an emergency situation?
And they did.
No, 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 no. Canadian, just let me, please. Am I creating a crime? Am I doing something illegal by blockading the cops from getting to an emergency situation if I block them off?
Yeah, that's not a peaceful protest.
Okay, okay, but this is the thing. A protest does not have a hot tub, a bouncy castle. Children in negative. This is the thing. Children did not need to be there. They did not need to have all those people come and sit there for 3 weeks blockading the U.S. Canada border because people lost their jobs because of that. People lost a lot of income because of that. That is illegal. That is an illegal occupation. Therefore, the Emergency Act was needed. Now, there was some flaws in the Emergency Act being used, but it wasn't totally. It, okay, so everyone says it was illegal, the Emergency Act being used. There were steps that weren't followed, but the whole thing was not illegal. The Emergency Act is there to help the country when something is going wrong. I don't understand why you guys are saying it was a protest. Okay, where's the protest? Well, the protests I've been to or I've seen were peaceful. There was nobody defecating anywhere, and I don't care if it was a person or an animal. I don't care. An animal should not be defecating on a Terry Fox statue. No one should have an effigy of our Prime Minister with a rope around its neck. No one should
Yeah,
be
I
burning.
never heard
Wait,
all this or seen
okay,
this.
but
If,
again, but see, you're going to
like,
defend
that could be
something,
just
but you
your
don't know.
opinion.
No, but ma'am, you're sitting here defending it, but you don't really know what's going on. That's what's really, really odd to
No, I'm
me.
talking about the Emergency Act and what they were protesting for.
Again, but
I
you're sitting
never
here, okay,
said that it was a
okay,
peaceful protest.
Okay,
it
hang
was
on
a
here,
temper
guys.
tantrum.
Smarshy, I wanna sparkle and shine. Do you want to jump in here and have you got something to say? And remember to keep it respectful, please.
Well, I'm going to try to chime in. My voice is kind of gone, but there's a few things that, um, um, yeah, the occupation really bothers me. It did from day one. Um, they say it was a peaceful protest, but the horns were honking for days, weeks. Sleep deprivation is a form of torture. How is that peaceful?
I never said it was a peaceful protest, and I said that's all they had to go on was the honking. So the Emergency Act says that it's to protect, like, the people and the government. And if you read it, if you actually go to the government website and read it.
Lindy, again, it was not a peaceful protest.
I never said it was.
But
You
that's
did.
exactly, but that's exactly why the Emergencies Act was invoked because of that, the repercussions. This had gone way beyond a peaceful protest, and the things that you guys were complaining about, and most of the things that the convoy was pitching, are provincial jurisdiction. This was a hate parade against Trudeau and designed to get Trudeau out of office without the Conservative Party having to bear any of the responsibility. And
Oh,
it's the
what were they
same,
protesting? What were they protesting?
Are you
they're
serious?
protesting mask
Mandates.
mandates. Mask mandates. The mandates, 90% of the rules,
Masks or vaccines?
all of it,
Both.
Mandate.
they were both.
Okay, so a vaccine is defined in Health Canada as a medical procedure. It goes
Yeah, but it's
against our
all.
Charter of Rights and Freedoms to
No,
force
it
a medical
doesn't.
procedure. So that's what they were protesting.
Okay, but you know what? Here's the thing. I'm going to break it down to you real quickly before I hop down because I'm really having a hard time and struggling in my brain to figure this out. Okay, so you realize that having a job is a privilege, right? Not a right. You understand that? Under our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, it's a privilege to have a job, right? You know
Okay,
that?
move on,
No, I
please.
think it's a right.
No, it's a
Well,
privilege. It's a privilege. You are not guaranteed to have that job. You are privileged to have that job, correct?
She doesn't understand that. Trust me.
Okay, okay, here's the thing. Again, it was a privilege to have a job. If you didn't get the vaccine, your boss didn't have to keep you. That's the thing you're misunderstanding. You
Lindy,
were
can I,
given a choice. Yeah, go
Lindy,
ahead.
can I ask you a question here? So
Sure.
for years and years, I had to submit to a drug test multiple times a year to keep my job.
Right.
Now, how is that any different than the government saying, hey, all of our studies and all of our data say that this is going to help our population reduce death, reduce transmission, and reduce the strain on our healthcare system? How are the two things different? If a company can force me to give up my genetics every couple of months, how is that different than you getting an approved vaccination?
Because pissing in a cup is different than a medical procedure.
Okay, it's not a
Medical.
medical procedure. A
The
vaccine is not
definition in Health Canada of a vaccine is a medical
a
procedure. Go
medical.
look it
Okay,
up.
Lindy, can I ask you why you keep giving us dictionary answers to particular words? We all know what vaccines do beyond the scope of what the dictionary term is.
No, it goes against our rights and freedoms to
No,
force a
it
medical
doesn't, my
procedure.
dear. No,
Yes,
it
it
doesn't,
does.
my dear.
Forcing a
How is
medical.
it? How is it
What other
different?
vaccine is mandatory and forced? What other
Measles,
vaccine
mumps,
is?
rubella, chickenpox, polio. There's half a
Those
dozen.
aren't forced vaccines.
Yes,
There's
they are.
Yeah,
We
yes,
anti-vaxxers
they
get
out
them
are.
there.
in Canada in childhood.
No, there's
Okay,
anti-vaxxers out there.
okay, Lindy, here, I want to ask you a question. Do you know the difference between a right and a choice? Do you know the difference? Oh, okay. Let me catch my breath because I'm just starting to feel my blood boil a little bit,
Okay,
and I
first
don't want to get angry. But
let's
here's
say
the thing:
Why are
this
you
is
you
so
have a
upset?
right. I'm not upset. I'm passionate about this because this is something that affects my life. Okay? Because y'all wanted to go to the Ottawa to protest, which you have a right to do to protest. That's in our Constitution of Canada, the right to protest. But you do not have the right to block off Ottawa. You do not have the right to have an effigy of our prime minister
Okay, take
with
your
a rope.
time.
Okay, again, you had a choice. You can be unvaccinated or you can be vaccinated. There's a difference. You made a choice not to get a vaccination. That
No, it
job
was forced to
doesn't.
get a vaccination. It was
No,
forced.
no, no, no,
To keep your
no.
No.
You
job, it
made a.
was forced.
Okay, again.
Hey, Lindy, hang on. Again, Lindy, if I had refused to take that piss test for my drug screen, They had every option to fire me because that was company policy. If you got fired from your job, it was because of company policy.
Okay, pissing in a cup is different than
Okay,
getting a needle
okay.
in the arm.
Again, Lindy, this is what you're not understanding. You have a choice not to get vaccinated, right? You have that choice. You do not have the choice to put other people's life in danger. That is not your choice. So if you're not going to
So,
vaccinate you and your family, that is your right as a Canadian. But you
okay,
do
so
not have
why
a
aren't
right
other
to make.
vaccines mandatory then? They
Because
They
they
put
are.
they
had
put
them.
people at risk.
Oh
Because
my God. Okay.
hang on, Lindy, there is a absolutely a regimen in school in elementary school, junior high school, and high school of vaccinations. Can you choose to get out of those vaccinations? Yes, absolutely. But if you look down in the States, they are now having an outbreak, a massive outbreak of a vaccine preventable disease.
Exactly.
Now,
So why isn't it
after
mandatory then?
Oh my God.
Lindy,
Oh my God.
okay, hang on here, guys. So, looking at the time here, it is actually time to switch over to the second topic of the evening. So, if I could get the panel to shut off their microphones, I'm going to introduce the next topic and we will continue on from there. Alrighty, so a universal basic income. What does that look like in Canada? Why should it be implemented in Canada? Now, I just helped Mrs. Radical go, or Grandma Radical go through her pension and her husband's pension and their military pension, and it was a process, I can tell you. Now, we already fork out a massive amount of money through pensions, through different employment programs, employment insurance, all of these different matters. But it starts to call into question what is actually the role of government. And I see the role of government changing to where the government basically has to be the protective arm of the average citizen against the predatory class. And since they don't or can't actually change or manipulate the pricing scheme that the predator class is forcing on us, then that requires the government to subsidize citizens so they don't wind up out on the street. And that's exactly what the CERB did during the pandemic. And one of the reasons that the convoy was actually able to do what it does was because of CERB. That unfortunately is also a reality. So if the government is here to protect us, what I see a future of is instead of going on I would call my local branch and I would say, I would like my UBI activated as of this date. The nice person at the UBI branch who no longer works at pensions but works at UBI would go, yes, can you please send us this information to confirm your last termination of employment or your going on, you're 65, you're now retired, instead of earning a pension, you would simply start your UBI payments and they would be automatic and you would only have to go to a centralized location. There would be no more pension. There would be no more EI. There would be no more of these multiple segmented parts of government that we currently pay and subsidize that all operate under different systems and don't communicate with each other. And that was one of the most difficult things about getting the pension going because the left arm didn't know what the right arm was doing. And all of those papers constantly had to go back and forth to maintain continuity. What if I had only had to send all of that documentation to my UBI office? They go and confirm it and say, yep, we start your UBI as of this date. You're good to go. And every 2 weeks, that check shows up in your account. What would that look like for saving money from first and foremost, a government standpoint, but also the ease and the access to which people have to gain these. Right now, God help you, if you have to go on something, there is always a waiting time, no matter what it is. If you're already inputted in UBI, you provide them with your ROE saying, no, I'm not working anymore, and they automatically start your UBI. Students would no longer be the prey of predatory lending companies because they would have a UBI to cover a good chunk of their living expenses month per month. And that is, I think, one of the reasons and one of the big standouts against a UBI system is exactly that. It doesn't allow the predator class to prey on us for the basics of life and the ability to put a roof over our head and threaten the populace with low wages because they are absolute necessity to keep a roof over their head.
Right.
I personally think a UBI would be a far better system than what we currently have. I think it would be streamlined far better than the system that we currently have, and we would only be reporting to one single entity at the government, not several different branches, none of which communicate with each other. All of these employees would be trained on a singular system. There would be no different systems. It would save the amount of effort, time, training, and money that the government puts into maintaining its basic social programs.
Yeah. And that's the
Discuss.
thing. I think UBI is a good idea. I think it is a very good idea. There's people that may disagree with me, and that's their point. But here's the thing: UBI would help normal, regular Canadians or everyday Canadians afford things that they need for their house. It wouldn't be it. I don't know what to else explain that it would help
Well,
Canadians
it's taking the whole fucking
massively.
thing out for nobody else can talk. Fuck. Oops.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So who was that last? Angela, go ahead there.
Hi. So we had basic income here in Ontario. So when Doug Ford came in, he eliminated it. I went to one of these safe, nice protests done by the Hamilton Acorn, and I actually met someone that was on it, and I listened to her success actually being on it, how it lifted her up, gave her the opportunity to go back to school, and it was let her know she had a little bit of security. However, when Doug Ford eliminated it and forced her to make a decision that she never thought she'd have to, because now she didn't have anything to fall back on. She had to fall back onto the system. And this is what happens. You fall back into the system that is unfortunately falling apart, right? It's not benefiting. But wouldn't it be nice to have that basic income? It's just so that you have that little bit of security that can help you, whether you wanted to take any kind of avenue in different things like this lady did when she went back to school, she's trying to better herself, whatever the situation is in your how you would use it. But to know that you have that security, you can eliminate all those like social programs, right? Because you would have that basic income.
Yep, and
And
that's exactly my point. Is I see it as not only I see it as a massive streamlining measure for the government. Yes, the transition would be bumpy and painful and expensive, but once the system was implemented, you would have a single social service that everybody in Canada applied to. You wouldn't go anywhere else. Whether you're a senior, whether you just got unemployed, whatever the situation is, there's only one phone call to make. Now, Canadian Mulligan, you haven't had much of a chance here. Have you had a chance to digest and want to throw in?
Um, I don't know. I read up a little bit on UBI. We kind of, I know it went into the Senate. It got kind of defeated a bit. I'm not really exactly sure where it's at. I guess it's kind of dead right now. I think it's a great idea. I think that's kind of as far as I can go right right now. Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah.
George, I'd be curious to hear your take on this. George Williams, I'd be curious to hear your take.
Yeah, sorry. So there has been a lot of countries around the world that have temporarily implemented UBI and or partial UBI. And if our government implemented UBI appropriately, it would not only stimulate our economy, it would put less of a burden on our health care. And all the countries around the world that have implemented UBI or partially would really, really, really excel. But the problem is you have a lot of bad actors that take care of it and manipulate the system. And then all the benefits that come along with it start to fall. But if they had a really good implementation program, which is accountability, that's I'm not going to go back into the old subject, but the lack of the accountability, the authority wasn't there to act in a timely fashion. Same with UBI. If they were to able to implement it and put measures in place where they can act when they need to, if our police are put in a position where people are leeching off the system, falsely reporting, the system is a fragile one. Any social construct in government could really provide value, stimulate the economy, be less of a burden on so many things. For example, even healthcare, or sorry, daycare. If you have families with kids, they can have somebody watch their kids. Both parents can go to work. It is a win-win situation, but it is really delicate and it's really fragile one. But I strongly support it, and I'm sure everybody would if our government executed it as they should.
Right on. Sparkle and Shine, what do you have to say on this? Sparkle and
I
Shine, there you are.
Just trying to get somewhere quiet. I've got kids in the house. Sorry.
No worries, I hear you.
I would love the idea of UBI, and emphasis on the U for universal, where there would be mommy's talking. There would just be a few that wouldn't qualify, but then like the rest of Canada, keeps people out of poverty and that kind of thing. My thoughts.
Well, I think at the end of the day, one of the things that we have to realize about a UBI is the people that are applying for a UBI, they're using it on the basics of life, the essentials. They're using it on groceries. They're using it on rent. They're using it on the car payment. They're using it on the getting by things of life. So, as far as I'm concerned, anytime that you're injecting money into people's lives where they have to spend that money, and unfortunately, if you're on UBI, you probably have to spend all of that money. You're not hoarding it away in a Swiss bank account. So all of that money, that whatever that UBI happens to be per month or every 2 weeks, whatever it happens to be, most of that money goes directly back into the economy almost immediately.
then the thing is it's almost just really the next inevitable thing in society. Like we have a friend that we enjoy watching, Daniel, if anybody knows him. He does a lot of TikToks around robots and stuff like that and what they're doing. And, any one of us can go to any grocery store, any dollar store, anywhere in Canada, and there's more robots running the tills than there are people. There are more machines doing the jobs. It is the absolute inevitable of the UBI. So the conversation, whether we like it or not, we have to start wrestling with it now.
Good thing.
Yep. Angela, what do you have to say?
I agree entirely because you need to have something basic, whether it's to pay for your rent, whether it's to have that little bit of security. After meeting people that were on the basic income when we had it here in Ontario and how it really impacted their lives, it was extremely important that we kept and maintain it, but unfortunately our government, our provincial government decided not to. But if it was on a federal level, I think it would be a lot more, what do I say, it, a lot more efficient to have it run on that level than to rely on the, different premiers.
All right. Smarshy, what do you have to say?
Like I said before, I pretty much disagree with UBI being a productive system that we can use. Um, with it being that, you're working and you still get the UBI payments, you're able to use it for whatever you need, like daycare, your children need clothing, diapers, stuff like that. You have an emergency payment coming out, you can use it for that. I think implementing the UBI is a good thing for our society. And that's pretty much all I have to say on that.
And I see it as, like Miss Radical said, as almost inevitable because the way prices are jumping and the way that everything that the business community is doing is looking to impoverish the lower classes even more than they are and to get rid of the middle class altogether. Because let's face it, if you're a high end on the income scale, the middle class is more of an inconvenience to you than anything. They don't serve any purpose to you as a rich person to have other rich people there other than maybe your few billionaire buddies. So we have to get it in our heads that they are shifting the game board to a point where the average citizen is going to struggle just to keep a roof over their head. So the government either has to step in and change the way that they conduct business, or they have to support the population, or they have to do both. I think it's going to be the government's job to do both. George Williams, what do you have to say?
Um, yeah, like I think that there needs to be a lot of responsibility. For example, if there's somebody downtown and they have an addiction, they get $2,000 for the month and it's gone in 24 hours. They're not really solving the problem.
Oh man.
But if we
No.
have people that are um, going to pay, like have a system in place where their housing is going to be guaranteed to be paid for, it's not like a wealthy person should be getting it, right? And I think the people in the lower, income bracket for an annual year should be receiving it. And I'm not saying that somebody that may have an addiction shouldn't receive it. I'm just saying that they should um, have supports in place. You don't want to have somebody getting something and they're going to OD, right? There should be some kind of system in place uh, to make sure that that universal basic income really does serve Canadians, because it is a wonderful thing that they should roll out. It'd be a beautiful thing to see Canadians get behind that.
I work with out in house community, and I just really want to share with you that a lot of people use for a multitude of different reasons, and I think we just have to be really mindful of that part when we're talking about who qualifies and the using piece of that.
I
You
couldn't
know,
agree
we're all
more.
still Canadians.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Sparkle and shine.
I'm getting not like hardly
Um,
anything.
yeah, I just kind of wanted to just a question that kind of popped up was like, what kind of criteria would there be that you wouldn't get it? Because that's one of the problems with a lot of aid programs and stuff like that is, you're working hard, you're trying to get, things set up and stuff like that, and say you get a raise at work, and you're like, finally, I can, get to the next level, but then that raise at work is just enough to, say, nope, you're cut off now, and then you're back
Yeah.
so much farther than you were ever ahead. So that's my concern with universal. It would be the short list of who doesn't get it. You'd have to have like huge income per year to disqualify yourself from it. Other than
Well, I think that's exactly where the system would come into play. It would be based on your income. If you lose your $250,000 a year job, you're not going to just be able to jump on UBI the day after you lose your job. However, if you're making 35 grand a year and you lose your job, yeah, absolutely, you make that phone call that day. I think it would be a hierarchical system entirely based on your income. It wouldn't be set up that, let's say you're rich at one point and you lose your shirt, you'd never be able to apply for UBI because you used to be rich. That wouldn't be the point of the program. The point of the program is to keep you at a certain level of living allowance. And obviously, and I've hated this excuse from the right ever since they started using it. But, well, people are going to abuse the system. You know what? There isn't a damn system that we have that somebody isn't abusing. The abuse in the system is absolutely expected part of any system. The
And
question,
usually the people abusing the system are the richest ones.
that,
So,
yeah, yeah, because they know how to abuse the system. Who was it? Wasn't it Brett Favre or whatever? I think it was Brett Favre, the football player. I mean, he's got money sticking out of his arse, but somehow managed to rig the system so that the benefits came to him from COVID relief. And that's exactly the sort of stuff that I'm talking about. Now, this has to be an income-based system, but it can't be a punishment system that if you don't conform to a particular fashion, I mean, obviously, if it's disruptive or against society or against other people, that would be an entirely different matter. But for the most part, this is about making sure that any average Canadian does not fall through the system and wind up on the street, because then it compounds the problems from every level, from the person enduring it and dealing with it right up to the top of the government, because now they have more homeless people on the street. And that was exactly the entire point of CERB, is it kept people's roofs over their head. Mulligan?
Hi there. The only I'm like I said, I'm totally agree with UBI from what I know about it. The only thing, of course, is that there would have to be guidelines, very strict ones, in terms of like somebody actually had a comment, and I can't remember who it was. In terms of Trudeau just came on. Um, he shit, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry. Um, in terms of landlords, corporations, kind of clawing that money back from people. So we'd have to have a really good um, set of guidelines so that people aren't, they get the 200, let's say the $2,000, but then they don't end up, on the better side of it. That's what I would be worried about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure because I haven't read like the whole thing, and I don't know if we would end up with UBI or BL, I can't remember what it's called, GLBI or whatever. So that would be my issue. And hopefully that they would be thinking of that before. I would I would hope before they rolled it out. Yeah.
Well, obviously, anything that we roll out, like anything in life, you do your best to put it together, and then you put it out there, and you see where the cracks and the flaws are. But the fortunate thing is we do have other countries that we can look at, not only how they implement their program, but the specifics of it, how it's actually ran through the government, and the specifics of how to actually implement it on a ground level of a guy sitting on a computer and going, okay, how do we create the software? So we do have examples around the world. We wouldn't actually be embarking on this, like we're jumping on a ship and sailing off into the West that no one's been to. We do have examples around the world where we can look at and copy, but like anything, it's going to be, even when I was out on the rigs, anytime you went out on a brand new rig, you didn't know what that first well was going to look like because you didn't know how all of the components would actually work in a real world environment when the stress is on. This system would be no different. Angela?
I agree, and I'm just reading about it as well because I also follow some individuals here on TikTok, and they're explaining how the program could pay for itself, and how by eliminating like social services and all those programs, that then that would be.
Somebody's got some background noise on. Could you shut your mic off, please?
So anyway, so as this individual was explaining how by eliminating all that, by creating this basic income, that would actually stimulate the economy, right?
Yep.
Because hey, you would have something basic there to help you, whether you're paying your rent, whether you're using it to pay your bills, or whatever it is. And it's been a known fact that, because I've seen this myself, because I've seen people actually living on it, and how it improved their lives. They were able to start a business, or they were able to go back to school, or they didn't have to worry about supporting themselves, like relying on services like social services or whatever. It was so beneficial that having universal, especially like you said, a lot of positions are being eliminated now. There's so much.
Yeah, and that worker shortage is being manufactured because at the end of the day, when you look up what the statistics are for what a company's largest expense is, it's always the employees. Taxes come in way further down the line, but it's always the employees that garner the largest expense
Please
for
say
any
but.
company. Sorry, Marshy, what do you have to say? Marshy, you there?
I'm here. Not much really. I mean, I pretty much said everything I needed to say. Going back to UBI, I think it's a good idea, and I believe our country deserves this program, and I believe it will help out everybody, not just the people that are struggling, yet people who are struggling, but not. It'll help the people that are really struggling, but it'll also help the people that are not really struggling, but they're still struggling. If that makes any sense, I don't know.
Absolutely, it does. So, my daughter was on the AISH program in Alberta, and essentially, the way that the AISH program is set up is it's enforced poverty. Because any opportunity that my daughter had to actually get ahead or improve her life, they were there to make sure that that absolutely didn't happen. Like, as far as the Alberta government was concerned, that if you're going to be on disability with us, we essentially own you, was the way that they were operating.
Mhm. So,
That same program, and it's difficult to get ahead.
Yeah, it's damn near impossible. I called it essentially enforced poverty because my daughter was she met her fella at that same time, and as soon as they kind of declared that they were a couple, right away the government was right into their bank account going, I want a full we want full disclosure on both your accounts
mhm.
for the last 3 months. And then 2 weeks later, they'd call them again and go, we want your full bank account and statements for the last 3 months. And so it became almost a game with the government to make sure that, God forbid, that they didn't earn even a cent more than the government thought that they should because she was on disability.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's horrible, but I mean, it's the way the government rolls, right? Like, there's not really one thing we can say, because if we do one thing and we get inheritance, we have to make sure that, we let them know, or, this and that. And I'm tired of it, because I'm just tired of it. I
So,
should be able to be with who I want to be and marry who I want to marry, and not have to worry about the government taking part of my money away because now I'm married or now I'm in a relationship. There are some benefits to it, but not a lot, right? So
Yep.
it's
George,
actually
go
really
ahead.
sad.
yeah, sorry, I don't know why I didn't remember this to say earlier. So, I do know that they had a special like a third party committee that was hired by the government as part of their study to implement this. And when I made the comment before about drugs and addicts, I didn't make that comment because of that. I made it about knowledge that I had that I didn't really want to share. I I don't know if most people know this, but on disability in Ontario, I'm not sure if they rolled it out elsewhere. The RBC Bank was giving people on the streets on welfare and disability an RBC card. And part of that study with that committee was reporting they wanted to have a way where they had to see how these people were spending the money and having controls like a trace of the money. And I don't think it really had too much to do, but I know like a concern of the committee was, and that was a part of their study by using these RBC accounts um, to try to make sure that these funds were given to these people and they could track and trace how it was spent. And that concern was for the reason of giving the money to
Where
people
did this come from?
and it being spent for things like that.
Yeah, so uh, here's one of the major issues that I have. Like, again, someone's got a lot of background TV noise. Could you guys shut that off,
Can
please?
you mute your mics, please?
Guys, mute your mics, please. Hey guys, can you mute your mics, please?
Mute your mics, guys.
Thank you. Um, I really, George, I understand the point that you're making here, but one of the troubles that I have is that with a lot of people, we seem to overlook the majority benefit that certain policies are going to make because we're super concerned that a few people are going to abuse that system. And that is exactly my problem with it. Any system that you put in place, hey, it's the smushy man. any system that you put in place, you are going to have people that abuse it. The question is can you put enough policies and safeguards in that it doesn't become rampant and that you can prosecute and persecute the people that are committing fraud against the system. So, and again, not this isn't directed completely at you, George, but I've heard this before from a lot of people on the right side that, we're super worried about fraud. Every system has fraud. It's part of the human complex. The question is can you put enough safeguards in it to make sure that it doesn't become rampant? Sparkle and Shine, I'll get your 2 cents in on this.
Yeah, just I agree with a lot of what was said. Like speaking out against AISH, that's exactly one of the policies that I was kind of mentioning. That you get any bit ahead and they cut you right off, which I think is just absolutely unfair and insane. But yeah, I work full time at a large retail store. Not going to name names, and any amount of money that would come in monthly or biweekly or whatever, you look around at my coworkers and I don't see any of them that it wouldn't help, in
Yep.
some way, shape, or form. So, I mean, it's not just for those, tiptoeing that poverty line. It's, you know, well, there's more and more of us that are tiptoeing that poverty line, but it could do so much good for so many Canadians. And so you kind of have to look at the greater good versus the few that are going to mess things up for everybody and stuff like that. And yeah, I got to get off of here because I work early, but I love Beaver politics. Thanks for having me up. It was great to,
Sparkle,
throw
miss
in my
you.
2 cents.
Thanks,
What was
Sparkle and
that?
Shine.
Good night. Have a great one. See you next time.
Thanks, Sparkle.
A sparkle.
Yeah, and like I said, George, not completely directed at you, but we have to. One of the things that I could talk about incessantly is understanding human demographics and what our population actually looks like. 4% of our population is sociopathic. 1% of our population is psychopathic. 20% of our population is not going to scrape 80 IQ. And we have to realize that not everybody is equipped to have every job. And the way that our system right now is set up, sociopaths are going to be drawn to things like business and politics and policing. We have to understand that these types of occupations are draws for some of the worst types of people. And part of the government's job is to make sure that once they achieve these levels of power that they are so desperate to get, that they don't have undue influence on the rest of the population. If you want to go hide out with your money, fine. But no more of this where we have the Elon Musks and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world directing the course of the world because they are rich but utterly unqualified in every other way, shape, and form. Mulligan?
So Radical, how about we've got to end this right away. How about we go through and see if anybody has anything they want to wrap up with?
Alrighty, yeah, I guess, yeah, I just checked the time. Thank you, my lovely. Canadian Mulligan, parting words. Oh, looks like Mulligan's offline. So, Angela, what do you have to say for yourself just as we head out the door here?
Yeah, because first of all, I support the universal basic income, and I think it's essential that we put something like this in place. I know we have to wait till the next form of government comes in. However, we have the basic outline of it, and it can work, and yeah, because it's been proven, and those other individuals here have actually done the breakdown of how it would work.
All right. All right. Thank you very much, Angela.
Bye.
Smarshy?
I also support the UBI. I support our country and our decisions to deal with the tariffs that Trump is imposing on our country. Yes, that's pretty much all I say is I agree with what our country is doing and standing up for what is right. And the UBI is another thing that is a right thing, a right move for our country. So thank you very much for having me. I'm going to drop down now.
Thanks, Marshy. George Williams, you're the final word tonight.
Yeah, so actually, I just wanted to thank you guys for having me up. And sometimes I really trip myself up because I actually have a lot of knowledge of things that I can't share, and sometimes I find myself speaking ahead of myself, and then I gotta stop myself. But I think it's really important for Canadians, whether we're on the right, on the left, even if we disagree or not, to keep respectful, like you said, because there's a lot of times I've had positions politically, and I've been firm on them. And the reason why I'm so vocal is not because I'm trying to persuade somebody else. I'm eager to see what somebody else is going to teach me about what I think is right. And I welcome with open arms every single time I am put in my place. It is truly an honor, and I cherish the moment that I have been able to be put in my place, humble myself, and I recognize that as the very moment I've made a change. And I think it's healthy that men um, come to realize that other men challenging them or their views may not be an attack, even if we're passionate about it. For me, it's always just about receiving somebody's opinion in a way that I can apply it myself and feel it just as my opponent does. And soon as it clicks, you have to be honest with yourself and change your position. It's better for me, it's better for the world. And sometimes in debates or conversations, some people think I'm disrespectful. It's never my intent. So I hope anything I said never come across that way today.
You know what, George? That was damn well said. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I want to thank all of my guests tonight. As always, Beaver Politics is now 6 days a week. Mr. Radical, myself, will be here on every Saturday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard. As always, tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. Thank you very much, everybody, for popping in. Thanks for spending your time here at Beaver Politics with the rest of us. And we will see you on Monday at 6 p.m. again for a brand new episode of Beaver Politics with Treaty Bird. And we'll see you there. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.